didn't take the time to make sure I was there before I received inspiration. Let's put it in a different way. We've never said this before. I got my inspiration from someplace other than my alignment. I was inspired, motivated is a better word for it, but I got my inspiration from need, or I got my inspiration from the people who we merged with, or I got my inspiration from, I'm looking for love in all the wrong places. I'm looking for inspiration in all the wrong places. I'm letting the wrong things, when it's off from that core beginning, it's going to stay off for a while until you feel like this, and then you're asking a bigger question. That resonates completely with you, doesn't it? It's sort of like, this is going to sound like a scanty analogy, but it really says it like it is. It's like buying a wonderful contraption that has the ability to do a lot of things for you, and it's got a battery in it, but you're too busy to put the battery in it. So you didn't put the battery in it, but you've got the instruction book out and you're doing everything else. You're pushing all the right buttons. You're doing every single thing that the manual says, and the damn thing is not giving you the results that you want because you didn't put the battery in it. You didn't hook up to the power. You didn't hook up to the energy. And so do that. First thing, put the battery in. When you wake up in the morning, get the power turned on. Get the power turned on. And then, once you're in sync with that, ideas will start flowing. Ideas will start flowing, and oh, do they feel good when they flow. We understand what it's like to be fully integrated in life with so many demands being made of you. And feeling like you need to respond to those demands. Jerry would say to Esther, let's meditate and then take a walk. And Esther would say, I don't have time to do that. See my list? This is the list that I'm using to justify my existence today. And nowhere on it does it have time for that. And we say you don't have time not to do that, because when you turn the power on, then you've got this leverage. Then you're tapped in to the universal Google. You're tapped into the universal navigational system. You're tapped into the universal concierge in the sky. You're tapped in to all of the right impulses and all the right timing and all of the right things that come out of your mouth. You're tapped into all of that. But until you do that, you're just sort of bumbling around on an equal par with the other crazy people that you share your world with.
Yeah.
You see,
100%.
your contraptions are feeding you constant information from others. Turn them off for a little while. Turn them off for a little while and get in alignment. You don't allow yourself what feels to you like the luxury of tuning in to your receptive mode. And yet everything that you want will come from that. And nothing that you want will come without it. It's just puny, paltry bits and pieces and snatches of the good stuff that you want. While the flow, the true flow, you are depriving yourself of. Don't you think it is interesting that as you compiled your things that you wanted to talk about, that the very first thing that you were inspired to say is the only thing that we're saying back to you? In other words, you've got it. You've got it. You know it. We have just spent this time wanting to put it into perspective for you so that you will benefit from this easy decision of alignment first and whatever you were inspired to later. You see, you put all of the pieces into your vortex, and your inner being knows every one of them, how they fit together, and how all of that fits together with everyone else. In other words, your inner being knows where you stand in relationship to everything that you want and what the path of least resistance is to get you to it. And so the more you have listened to us and the more that you have lived life, the more when you are not up to speed, in other words, even as we have these conversations and you are listening in, more is going into the vortex. Don't you feel just from this conversation a whole lot of resolve happening within you? Didn't you feel yourself putting more into the vortex? Aren't you more clear about who you are and what you want? And don't you feel more of a determination to hook up with this energy that creates worlds and experience the leverage of that power? And don't you remember those times when you've been in that flow and how things felt to you? And what we want to emphasize is that's the way life is supposed to feel for you. And because it has felt that way for you from time to time, frequently in many cases, it's felt that way to you, and now you have that conscious realization of it. In other words, this is your knowledge. Then when you defy your own knowledge, it feels extra off. And that's exactly where you are. And that's where Esther was this week too. She was so mad that she was mad. She was so mad that she was mad. And she was so mad that it became so clear to her that she'd made a decision, not from here, but from here. So mad at herself when we say that's not step 5. Step 5 is being back in step 1 and not being mad at yourself for being back in step 1. Step 5 is understanding that this mastery is something that you're accomplishing all of the time, and that there's no right or wrong to it. There's just more alignment and less alignment, and more alignment and less alignment. And it's sort of like when you get used to things feeling really good, you want to throw a little fit when they don't feel good. And we don't want you to adapt to not feeling good. We think the fit is better. We mean this kindly. Who are not really integrated and experiencing life the way you intended to here. In other words, it's sort of like rather than cleaning up your own yard, you're looking over the fence at what they got going on over there. When there's so much potential in your own yard, but you're bored with your own yard. It's been sort of looking the way it's been looking for quite a long time, and it's no longer ringing your bells, and you've got all that resistance about it. And so sometimes you just are weary of looking at what you are about, so you want to look someplace else. We are not wanting to shrink your thoughts. We're not wanting you to be less insightful about the vastness of all of this. We just want to express in a way that you can really hear the satisfaction and the power of focus, of focusing on what you're about. And this is specifically for you. You get yourself into alignment and you get yourself into the receiving mode, as you often do and as you just did. And in that receiving mode, all kinds of things will flow to you about anything that is of interest to you, because there is no question that is off limits. And we are not for a moment wanting to say to you that you do not have the right or the interest or the ability or the eagerness or the value in focusing on all of those other things. We just want you to master the receptive mode, and then anything that occurs to you, you can begin to experience. In other words, we are focused through Esther from another dimension altogether. And you all have the ability to have this experience. And the way that Esther accomplished that was by focusing herself into a vibration that allowed that. And so we're not trying to talk you out of intertwining with what you can't see. In fact, that's our whole message here today. We're wanting to talk you into intertwining with what you can't see. If you will begin to accept these other galaxies, this vastness of space, as a vibrational reality that, yes, you do have access to, but don't try to turn it into the physical before you have tuned yourself to the frequency of its non-physical. And once you are a master at tuning yourself to the frequency of its non-physical, then it or they, whatever you want to call that, can begin to express through you. And you can have the full experience of all of that. But stop looking around for little bones in the backyard that come from other spacecrafts, because that's not the way you are interacting intergalactically.
All right.
You bring to us the most significant thing that's going on the planet today, and we want to say to you, what if there is no solution to that? What if there is no end to things that you don't want? Where does that leave you? What if there is no end to the things that you do not want? Because that's the way it is. There is no end to the things that you do not want. Because the things that you do not want have to exist in the same atmosphere where the things that you do want are. So what if there is always going to be that end of the stick that you don't want? What if every subject that you pick up the stick of has wanted on one end and the absence of it on the other? What if there will always be plenty of what you do not want? What are you going to do? Focus on what you do want and let that be the basis of your life experience. That is the answer. And you don't have to wait for everybody else or anybody else to figure that out. That's a really important part in this. Because if you need them to figure it out before you can have peace, then you've put yourself in a place where you will never have freedom. You've got yourself locked into the end of the stick where you can't win. I'll be happy when everyone else is happy. And I'll feel safe when there are no more terrorists on the planet. I'll feel good, you think you say, when everybody agrees with me and everyone wants to live just like I do. And we say, look within your own nation. Look within your own Congress. Look within your own government. How aligned are they with one another? In other words, there's more war going on there than anywhere else on the planet. Right there, right there, right there, right there. No one looking for solution. Everyone looking at problem. Everyone pushing against problem. Everyone getting more problem. And nobody feeling good, you see. Good thing they don't matter to the well-being of your nation. So stop terrorizing yourselves by disallowing the expansion that you've already achieved. And stop asking somebody else, anybody else, to do anything different so that you can feel better. Because none of them were born to please you. Not one of them. Not one of them. And those who have been standing on their head to please you have given you a distorted view of how it's supposed to work, you see. We have enjoyed this interaction more than any words that Esther could ever find could convey to you. And while we stand in a place of knowing about what this conversation today means to you and will mean to you in terms of what's unfolding next, our favorite part about this conversation is that again and again you came away from resistance and toward alignment all day long. The thing about vibrational shift and emotional alignment is that the evidence that you think you want is a day or two out. The evidence that we want you to want is what took place already, in that feeling of clarity, in that feeling of more eagerness. These are emotions that are manifestations, that are the first indications of the releasing of resistance. And we want you to know that with the hundreds of you that are here in this room, and the more than that around the world today who are listening in, we have never felt more energetic vibrational shift than what you all accomplished in this conversation. Will evidence support that? For sure. Do we want you to care about that? Not at all. It's the emotional evidence that we want you to crave, to be aware of. Because one of the things that you say to us on a pretty regular basis, although we've sort of trained it out of some of you, you want instant manifestations. If I could just snap my fingers and have that, then I'd be a happy person. We say, why don't you just snap your fingers and be a happy person? You can pretty close to do that. And if you've heard us today, that really is what you're reaching for. You're reaching for the ability to do that. Oh, people that are watching you from outside of your emotions that you feel are going to be astonished at the movement in your experience. But don't let them train you back into those conditions being what you're going for. Stay focused on the emotional achievement. And it is our promise to you that you will live happily ever after, in this body and way beyond, but happily ever after. There's great love here for you. And as always, we remain stubbornly in your vortex.